Let's roast some coffee. Today, we're gonna do a high temp roast, just on the lower edge of high temp, Ethiopian Natural Process, all right? We're gonna get right to that edge where the coffee's changing over from a low temp roast, which has no smokiness, it's really bright, to high temp roast, which the beans start to take on just that touch of roastiness in there, just a little bit of smokiness in the cup. But for me, the approach that I'm making between the two has a lot to do with how much mass I'm putting in the drum, what my airflow is, and how I use flame with that. With lower temp roasts, I'm using less mass, so smaller, I'm weighing out less beans. I open up the airflow more, and I'm using higher flame, and it's pushing the entire thing. But you need to do those things in order to develop the bean in the roaster in that short amount of time. And it really has a huge effect on the flavor, having your air and your flame and your mass in that way. I'm doing a 14-pound batch of Ethiopia, and I'm going to have my airflow closed. The damper is going to be closed a little bit more, and I'm going to have my flame just a little bit lower. So those elements are going to fill this bean out. It's going to develop it, but it's going to develop it a little bit slower. It's going to make the roast just a little bit longer, and it's going to take the chocolatey side to this bean and put that forward, and take the fruity notes and set them back a little bit. On a low temp roast of the same bean, I would open the air up, I would push the flame up, and we would have, instead of 14 pounds, I'd put, let's say, 10 pounds in here, and really bring out the zippy notes, strawberry, blueberry. But today I want to show you a roast that's just on the edge and is a very different approach than that super fast Ethiopian bright fruity notes, all right? With my charge temperature, I'm going to be a little bit lower. I'm going to start today, I'm going to set 387 is my charge. What that allows me to do is push the beans right away to get them going, and then I can pull back the flame and let it sit at a lower flame setting for a longer chunk of time. All right, here we go. Our flame and our air are connected. So if you go high flame, you can go a lot of air, or if you're like, I would like a lot of airflow, then you're going to need to use more flame. Flame becomes more efficient in transferring heat when your airflow is closed up. So if you have less airflow, 4 inches of flame is going to do much more than high airflow with 4 inches of flame. And it's kind of, it makes sense because it's just pulling, the airflow is just pulling the heat right through the drum, pulling it right out, where when you have lower airflow, that heat can sit in there. That environment is totally different, okay? So let's get this one started. We're gonna zero out our clock, and I'm gonna close my airflow and get the batch started. Now I'm opening up my airflow, and I'm gonna feel this out a little bit. I think I'm gonna go to 40% airflow, and I'm gonna start at 5.4 inches of flame. And in the first minute of roasting, I really wanna listen, and I want to watch my numbers and see what's going on. Are stuff turning around really fast, or what's changing over here, so I know how I can make the adjustments. I have, my max flame is 6 inches. I'm at 5.4, so I have a pretty high flame setting, and I know I'm going to want to pull that back. And I want to be sure that I see that environmental temp has turned around and begun to increase, so I can start to pull it back. So I'm going to start doing that now. Just a little bit. We'll go down to 5 inches of flame. So 1 minute and 14 seconds in. 190, 379. We'll go to 5 inches. And I have a feeling like I'm going to pull that back again pretty quick. What I'm going to do with this roast is get the flame to almost be as low as possible while still pushing the beans. I mean, I could drop it down to 2 inches and I will roast the coffee, but that's just it's too low. So I'm gonna just, right now, I'm watching the increase in my environmental temperature, and it's increasing by 4/10 or 3/10. So that's pretty good and fast, but I'm gonna just pull it. It's going, we're 2 minutes in. I've still got a fair amount of heat on there, so I'm gonna pull it back. I'm gonna get down to 4.2 inches of flame. All right, so 2 minutes and 14 seconds. 192 on the beans and 399 on the environment, and I'm going to 4.2 on the flame. Now, what I'm looking for right now is the environmental temperature. If you're using a program where you're looking at your time and temp on a profile, I'm thinking about that slope of the environmental temperature. Am I increasing really fast, or am I kind of drawing out? I'm hoping to just slowly draw my environmental temp out, and I'm going to adjust airflow. And right now it's going by 2 or 3/10, which is pretty good. And I'm gonna in this, we're still in the first phase of, there's 3 phases, in roasting. We're still in that first phase, so it hasn't begun to change color yet. And that's the main phase where you're wanting to push the beans. So I'm thinking about my finish environmental temperature, which is dictated by what kind of roast am I doing. It's a high temp roast, and how much mass do I have in there. I have 14 pounds in there, and it's a high temp roast, so I feel comfortable going up to, let's say, 460, 465 on the environmental temperature. So those are my limits. I'm going to go there. I'm going to push through this first phase to get within that range of my finish environmental temp. I'm going to get close to that and pull off the heat so that the second half of the roast, things can push through easily. So I'm looking here, and we've started going up by 0.3. We're getting close. 300 degrees on the bean temp is when things are beginning that second phase. So I'm going to just kind of, I'm 20 degrees out from my finished environmental temperature. I'm almost into the second phase, so I feel really good about pulling back my flame right now. I'm not trying to stall it out. There's plenty of high temp roasts that in the second phase I'll allow to stall, so I can have them develop more and give me space to increase my environmental temperature later. This time I want this number to just continually increase, but I want it to just slow down a little bit here. So we're going to just keep pulling my flame back. We're at 305, so 5 minutes, 40 seconds, and about 300. Let's check our beans and see how they're doing. Oh yeah, really nice. You can tell a lot about your roast based upon how the yellowing is happening in your beans. Is it really splotchy? Is it really different? Can you already see that the beans are stressed at this point, which you can tell from tipping or scorching or things like that, which happen when you're roasting too fast. Sometimes your airflow is a huge factor in terms of roast defects. So if you're roasting, you're struggling maneuvering the roaster in the way that you're trying to get there, look to your airflow. That's something that you can easily adjust and will drastically change how the heat is imparting into your beans, okay? So I'm pulling my gas back again. We're at 650, 337, 458. So I'm just about at the top of where I want my environmental temperature to be, okay? Now, when I think about my finished environmental temperature, I think about that finished environmental temperature in relation to the time frame of where I'm at in my roast. Specifically, and this is super important, when did you hit your finished environmental temperature in relation to first crack? If you hit your finished environmental temperature before you reach first crack, that's a whole set of roasts and flavors. If you hit your finished environmental temperature after first crack, you're now in a completely different. Now, those variables combined with what beans you're using are like, just those alone are infinite, okay? There's so many spaces to like tinker around with. But just to simplify it, let's say that you're to hit your environmental temperature previous to first crack. Your heat application and airflow prior to that is very different, which means how you're transferring your heat to your beans. First cracks happen. 815, 369, and 462 degrees environmental temperature. So we're hitting yellow at around 5 minutes and 40 seconds. We're now in first crack at 8:15. So you're looking at like 2 minutes and 35 seconds about that we sat inside of the second phase. So I'm going to write that down, 2:35. Now, this is one of those things where your second phase of your roast, you don't want to be, the second phase of your roast, you want to be longer than your third phase of the roast. When you're doing high temperature roasts, you're going to have to either stretch out your second phase so that you have enough time in your third phase to get up to that temperature that you're looking for, or you want them to be symmetrical. Like it took 230 on second phase, I'm going to do 230 on the third phase. I've said it before, I'm always trying to roast for balance. So I'm not trying to have a 3 minute or 3.5 minute second phase and have like 45-second third phase. I want there to be balance. So it means I have to develop the body and I have to develop the flavor set too. And they're in relation to each other. Now this one, I am letting go higher than I would have with my environmental temperature. I'm allowing it to go higher, and I'm doing that because I want to stay within that time frame. When I'm looking at this, I have about 30 more seconds to get up to that 415 temp range, okay? And we're gonna be just about there. So I'm starting to pull, at this point I can pull my flame back because I got plenty of heat inside of the drum. I don't have to worry about that. I'm gonna open up the airflow just a little bit. I'm gonna watch these beans, all right? Woo. All right, there it is, right there. So at 10:45 is how long the batch was, which is 2 minutes and 30 seconds for the third phase. I got to 415, which is that temperature-wise, it's right on that cusp. I wouldn't call this a light roast, but I know that there are coffee companies that would call this a light roast. It hasn't quite entered second crack, which is a lot of places, that's where they're gonna say second crack is where we're gonna say we're in dark roast. So I like to find, there's certain beans that are really wonderful right on that line of 415. But you kind of have to approach it a different way. I don't want these beans, because they're flavors, there are really nice acidic notes in here, like the acidity is bright and juicy at super low temps. I want to keep some of those berry notes inside of there. So that means I need to roast faster, and I need to still approach it in a way that's like easing them up to that higher temperatures. If I were to rush really fast, or stretch the roast out, or push really hard at the flame, I'm gonna lose those acidic notes. So I'm trying to go as fast as I can with the smallest amount of flame, but getting far enough in development where chocolate notes prevail. And this is one way that I use it, where I bring the airflow, dampen the airflow a little bit, keep the flame lower, and just do a slow, steady push all the way up to that 415 mark. So, sweet. I hope this helps.